Welcome to Monster Territory, ladies and gentlemen. We're drawing closer and closer to the 2026 season. I'm very excited about it. I know all of you at home are very excited about it as well. But for this episode, going to preview a little bit more of this upcoming season. I'm going to talk about 5 players on the Red Sox this year that I'm feeling pretty good about. Now, I'm not going to talk about guys like Garrett Crochet, Roman Anthony. Those are obvious guys that I like for 2026. You could even include Ranger Suarez in that mix, sign him to the big deal this past offseason. I mean, heck, you could even throw Trevor Story into that mix, finally coming off a good season. Jarren Duran, even though he was a bit up and down last year, he's been one of the better players in baseball over the last couple of years. So I'm not going to talk about, those kind of guys. I'm going to look at guys maybe a tier below that I'm just feeling very good about this year, kind of weighing a few different things, looking at metrics, and just overall feel, if that makes sense. So I'm going to give you 5 players that I'm feeling very confident about in 2026. Before I get started, if you can, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new. We're trying to get to 7K by opening day. We're running out of time, but we are within 500 subscribers. I think we could do it. So if you can, help us out. And if you are listening in podcast format, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us out a lot. So let's get to number 1 on my list. It's a newcomer for the Red Sox this year, and that is Sonny Gray. Also, if you're with me here on YouTube, how do you like the new look of everything right now? We've been doing some updates over here on Monster Territory. I know you can't see this if you're listening in podcasts, but if you are listening on a podcast, come on over to YouTube and come check it out. It's looking a little snazzy over here, I'm just saying. So, very excited. We got the post games coming up this year for Monster Territory. I'm very excited about all the new looks that we're bringing to the show. Anyway, let's get to it here. So Sonny Gray, I got first on my list. Now, I remember when the Red Sox first acquired Sonny Gray. There was a lot of debate. Oh, is he the number 2? Oh, man, there's no way he's the number 2. Then you had a good handful of people as well saying, no, he's a pretty solid number 2. Now, when you asked my personal opinion, I said, as a number 2, I saw him more as a 6 out of 10, maybe a 6.5 out of 10, 7 out of 10 tops as a number 2 in the rotation. I thought it was okay as a number 2, but for me personally, I think he was better as a number 3 in the rotation. As a 3 in the rotation, I was thinking, all right, maybe more like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. I think he's easily one of the better 3s in the rotation in all of Major League Baseball. If you take a look here over the last few years or so, he ranks top 10 when it comes to Fangraph wins above replacement, has a very good strikeout to walk ratio. Sonny Gray is an excellent pitcher to add to the rotation, no matter where you put him there. This guy's going to be a bulldog. He's a competitor out there, and I think he's also just a perfect fit at Fenway Park. And if you take a look at the batted ball profile when it comes to balls in the air, he gives up more opposite field contact. And at Fenway Park, you got a couple of guys running around out there that just so happened to win some gold gloves last year. Cedar Rafaela, who I think is the best center fielder in all of Major League Baseball, and Wilyer Abreu, who's excelled in right field over at Fenway Park. So Sonny Gray, I think, is going to fit very well. He's going to feel very comfortable out there giving up contact in the air because he got those 2 guys behind him. Now, another thing about Sonny Gray that I like, not necessarily about him, but it gives Brayan Bello the opportunity to go down into the 4 spot in the rotation. And we've been waiting for Bello to really take that next step forward. And I think with him being in the 4 spot, that takes some pressure off of him. He can work on trying to increase those strikeouts a little bit more this coming year. So that's a benefit of having Gray in this rotation as well. But with Gray, I'm also very comfortable with him in the postseason. Over 6 postseason starts, ERA at a 3.26. Like I said, this guy's a competitor. He's a bulldog. I've talked about this before. Really reminds me of Jake Peavy back from 2013. A guy that he's just going to put his heart on his sleeve out there. He's going to work quick. He's going to have a good tempo. He's going to be fiery out there. I just love the intangibles of Sonny Gray. But again, getting back to the point that I just made, with where he gives up contact, I'm very comfortable with that. I think he's going to fit like a glove in Fenway Park. And with Andrew Bailey as the pitching coach, I think that's also going to be fun to see how this unfolds, because with Sonny Gray, he's got a ton of different pitches that he works with, a lot of different breaking pitches, off-speed pitches as well. He's not going to come at you, with a ton of velo. He's going to sit, 92, 93. He can, bump it up there a little bit as well. But I think with Andrew Bailey and, with what the Red Sox pitching staff and on the coaching side of things have been doing when it comes to the pitch mix with their guys over the last couple of years, getting more so away from those four-seamers and really utilizing the strengths. I think this is going to be a very good place for Sonny Gray moving forward. Even, with Gray at his worst, I think is still a very solid option at the 3 spot. Very excited to see what Sonny Gray can do for the Red Sox this coming year. But we got a few more guys. Let's go talk about them. All right, so moving on to the next guy, and like I said in the intro, I'm not focusing so much on the obvious candidates. I talked about Garrett Crochet, Roman Anthony fitting into that category, but in the bullpen, I would put Aroldis Chapman and Garrett Whitlock in that category. But there's another guy I like a lot for 2026 coming out of the bullpen, and that is Justin Slaten. Now, 2025 was a weird year for Justin Slaten. He came off a very good season in 2024. Lots of hopes for Justin Slaten going into the 2025 season, but then he started having some issues with the injuries. He wasn't looking as sharp in the early going. He ended up coming back from injury later on in the season, and he was looking a lot better there after a couple of bumps, but just a very inconsistent season for Justin Slaten. Now, taking a look at the overall numbers with him last year, ERA was at a 4.24, but the FIP was better at a 3.69. Now, what made Slaten so good in 2024 was a very good strikeout to walk ratio, 9.4 strikeouts per 9, 1.46 walks per 9, 0.6 home runs per 9. So he's not going to rack up like a ton of strikeouts out of the bullpen, but he's going to have great command. He's going to keep the ball in the yard. Justin Slaten's a guy with very good stuff, good velo. So that's why, we were all hoping, based off of what he did in 2024, to take a step forward last year, even bump up those strikeouts further. But again, he was having a lot of injuries, a lot of inconsistencies, but still, he ended up providing some pretty solid numbers overall. Like if you looked at this ERA and FIP, for on just like a blank baseball card out there, you'd be like, oh, okay, those are pretty good numbers, nothing amazing, but, not bad by any means. So with Slaten, the fact that this is only over 36 games, having injuries, inconsistencies, I'd say he actually turned out to be pretty good. So taking a look over at StatCast, and this is what has me hopeful as well. Again, a lot of issues last year, but still putting up really good metrics overall. The velo was looking good. He was still getting guys to chase out of the zone. The swing and miss was still very solid. And he was inducing a lot of weak contact. He was in the upper tiers when it came to the hard hit percentage. And with the extension that he has, he's just going to be harder to pick up. So combine that, with the good velo, the good stuff that he has, and a more consistent season for Justin Slaten in 2026, hopefully, with some good health, I'm feeling good about him, right? And I think that's going to be really important because, like I said, Aroldis Chapman, Garrett Whitlock, those are obvious guys that you're counting on to have good seasons. But, what if one of those guys or even both those guys take a bit of a step back this coming year? So that's why you're looking at Justin Slaten to really improve on how things went last year, for him to really step up here in 2026. I think he's a key piece of this bullpen, but I'm excited to see how he does. And if he's healthy, I'm counting on him to have a very good year. So let's move on here. We got a few bats to talk about. Let's go talk about the next guy. All right, so let's talk about another newcomer for the Red Sox in 2026, and not the flashiest player by any means. He's not Alex Bregman. He's not Ketel Marte. He's not even Isaac Paredes, but he goes by the name of Caleb Durbin, who I think could end up being a really solid pickup for the Red Sox here in 2026. When this trade first happened, a lot of people were thinking, oh man, I thought we were going to go get Isaac Paredes from the Astros. I mean, that's a guy who could hit around probably 30 home runs at Fenway Park. But instead, they opted to go for a guy that is pretty undersized. Kind of reminded a lot of people of Dustin Pedroia. Now, I'm not going to start making comparisons to Dustin Pedroia by any means. I don't think that's fair. Dustin Pedroia, one of the best Red Sox players of all time. But Durbin, because of the frame that he has, a guy that's 5'7", not the biggest guy out there, but a very gritty player, a guy that's not afraid to get dirty. He's going to be a dirt dog kind of a player. So I can understand why people were thinking of Petey, from the get-go. But I don't think, we got another Dustin Pedroia on our hands, but I do think we have a very solid player who I think can fit very well at Fenway Park. Now, take a look at the numbers here. With Durbin last year, he finished third in Rookie of the Year voting last year for the Milwaukee Brewers, hitting .256, on base at a .334, slugging only at a .387. We'll talk about that in just a second. WRC plus at an okay 105, a little above league average last year, but a 2.6 Fangraph wins above replacement overall. And the reason it's getting closer to 3 here is because he's going to give you very good defense. And, for the Red Sox, that's something that they were looking to improve this coming year. Now, if you take a look here, when it comes to the outs above average, he was pretty middle of the road. But over at third base, he also played some second base too. He was a lot better over at third base. And that's looking like maybe where the Red Sox are going to be going with him more so. I could see him bouncing around between third and second base, depending on matchups and whatnot. Marcelo Meyer is going to be in the mix in some way, shape, or form. Don't forget you have IKF in there. You got someone like Angel Monasterio, maybe Brendan Rodgers, but obviously Caleb Durbin is going to be one of the full-time guys here. So I'm just saying, depending on matchups, he'll be at either third or second base, whatever it may be. But if you are looking for something that he can at least help make up the loss of Bregman for, it's definitely the defense. So I'm not going to be surprised to see him play a lot of third. I could definitely see him playing some second base as well. But when it comes to the bat of Caleb Durbin, I'm excited about the fit at Fenway Park. Now, as you can see last year in 2025, he had a pull air percentage of 20.4. That was above league average last year. And what do you got over in Fenway Park? That big old green wall. I think you guys know what I'm talking about. The Green Monster, of course. So with Caleb Durbin being a right-handed bat, I could see him playing a lot of wall ball. Now, if we're taking a look at the expected home runs last year, he had 11 home runs, but at Fenway Park, according to StatCast, they're only giving him 5. So because of the launch angle, I could see, more balls bouncing off that wall, but a guy that could definitely get a lot of extra base hits. So, the more bases that he racks up, the more I could see that slugging creep up there a little bit, maybe even get into that, 420 to 430 kind of a range. But what I'm looking for with Caleb Durbin is just a good, gritty at-bat every time he comes up to the plate. He was very good when it came to the plate discipline last year. He was top 25 when it came to the contact percentage, but when it came to strikeout percentage, he was in the 98th percentile. When it came to the whiff percentage, he was in the 96th percentile. Chase rate in the 72nd percentile, and he squared up a lot, 95th percentile overall. You're not going to get an amazing batted ball profile with him. He was pretty low in pretty much all of the major categories there, but again, at Fenway Park with the right-handed bat, he could play with that monster, and I could see him having himself a really solid year for the Red Sox this year. Again, not the flashiest of players. He's not Alex Bregman. He's not, Ketel Marte, who was at the top of our wish lists if we weren't going to bring Bregman last year. Even Isaac Paredes, who, with him, not an amazing batted ball profile, but a guy that definitely had enough power to clear the Green Monster at Fenway Park, give you, say, around 30, 35 home runs. Now, with Durbin, I'm not expecting, 20 to 25 home runs by any means, but is this a guy that could maybe get into that 15 to 20 range if he could adjust that launch angle a little bit, get a bit more loft in his swing? I don't think it's completely out of the question. But overall with Durbin, a guy that's going to be a gritty player, he's going to give you good defense, he can play with that monster a little bit, and he's also going to give you a little bit of speed as well. That's something I forgot to mention. 18 stolen bases last year. So overall, I'm excited to see what Durbin can bring to the table. I think he's someone that can be a fan favorite with the Red Sox. All right, moving on to the next player on this list, and another newcomer for the Red Sox in 2026. Now, going into the offseason, Craig Breslow was talking about adding a big bat for the middle of the order that can give you some good power. So we were all thinking maybe Pete Alonso, maybe Kyle Schwarber, but Alonso went to the Orioles, Schwarber, he went back to the Phillies, so we were all thinking, all right, who is going to be this big power bat for the middle of the order? And the Red Sox ended up pivoting to a guy that doesn't come off as this big power bat that can hit third or fourth for you, and that's Willson Contreras. Now, Contreras has been very solid in his career up to this point. Helped the Cubs win the World Series back in 2016 in his rookie season, put up solid numbers along the way with the Cubs, and most recently, the Cardinals, and last year had another solid year. Hit 257, on base at a 344, slugging at a 447, a very good WRC plus at 124, 20 home runs, and a 2.8 F4 overall. Now, with Contreras, the most home runs that he's hit in his career up to this point is 24 back in 2019. But here's another guy that I think could fit like a glove at Fenway Park. I think you're starting to notice a bit of a trend here with a few guys on this list. Now, with Contreras last year, yet again, putting up some very good batted ball data, ranked very well with the barrel percentage, the hard hit percentage, the exit velo was pretty solid overall, the expected slugging was in the 84th percentile, the ex-WOBA was in the 86th percentile. We know Willson Contreras is a solid bat. Now, where I really like Contreras, especially at Fenway Park, is, once again, bringing up the pull air percentage. We talked about this with Caleb Durbin, but with Contreras, he's got more power upside than Durbin. So last year with Willson, he set a career high when it came to his pull air percentage with a 19.8%. The highest he had put up in his career up to that point was a 15.9 back in 2022. So he jumped up right around 4%. That's a pretty big increase. And the Red Sox saw that and said, hey, you know what? We don't have to give up a whole ton for Contreras. We'll have to pay some of the contract, but the Cardinals, they were going to pay off most of the contract, and he didn't have to give up a whole ton of prospects to acquire him. So in the end, I ended up really liking this acquisition for the Red Sox. Again, he's not Pete Alonso, he's not Kyle Schwarber, but, when you take a look at the batted ball profile, the amount that he pulled in the air last year, could this be a guy that ends up giving you around 25, 30 home runs even? Could he set a career high in home runs for the Red Sox this year? I don't think it's completely out of the question, especially if he can utilize that green monster out there. Now, another bright side with Willson is the defense that he's going to bring. Now, remember, Contreras, he was a catcher in his career all the way up until last year. He moved over to first base for the first time, and he ended up excelling over there. You take a look here at the metrics. He ranked very well in outs above average at the position. He was in the 90th percentile with 6 outs above average. The arm strength was looking very good, of course, obviously being a catcher for years. So, he ended up fitting like a glove there. And with the Red Sox, like I said earlier, we're talking about infield defense. That's something they've struggled with over the last few years, especially at first base too. But Contreras, he's going to be a solid guy there. I think he's also just going to bring a good presence for the clubhouse, a guy that, he's been viewed as a leader for the clubhouse before, both with Chicago and St. Louis. He's going to bring a good energy to this Red Sox team, a competitor. He's going to put his heart on his sleeve out there. I think the Red Sox fans are really going to love him. Sure, let's see, what he can do here over the next couple of years. He is 33, so by the time he's done with the Red Sox, or at least his contract is over, he'll be 35. So let's see if the Red Sox can tap into a bit more with Willson here. Again, I like the fit at Fenway Park. I just think this is a guy that could really take advantage, the veteran that he is. I think he can make those adjustments even more playing at Fenway Park for half a season. I'm very excited about Willson Contreras. But what I'm also very excited about, ladies and gentlemen, and that is the World Baseball Classic coming up. And, Willson Contreras, he's on Team Venezuela along with Wilyer Abreu, might I add. Really liking Venezuela this year for the World Baseball Classic. And you got some good players here. Of course, Willson Contreras, Wilyer Abreu. But you got Ronald Acuna Jr. in the mix. You got Eugenio Suarez. You got Gleyber Torres. You got Maikel Garcia. Even a hitting machine like Luis Ariz. Andres Jimenez, Ezequiel Tovar. Very good defense there. You got a lot of good position players here with Team Venezuela. Now, they are going to be on a tough side of the bracket here. Of course, you got the defending champs, Japan. They're always very good anytime they do a World Baseball Classic. And you got the Dominican Republic as well in the same pool. So it's going to be very tough on this side of the bracket. But Venezuela absolutely has the talent, I think, to go on some kind of a run. But another good thing about the World Baseball Classic is all of the coverage is brought to you by our friends over at Fox One, which is live. Stream all of your Fox favorites together in one place, including all the World Baseball Classic games over the next few weeks. And after that, the best Major League Baseball action all season long. From the World Baseball Classic through the World Series to the World Cup to NASCAR and IndyCar. With Fox One, you get it all live. You can start your 7-day free trial today. Offers are subject to change, but you can download Fox One today and stream the World Baseball Classic live. Go to fox1.com for complete terms and conditions. Fox One, streaming now. Alrighty, moving on to the final player on my list. The guy that I just brought up, teammates with Wilson Contreras in the WBC this year, and that is Wilyer Abreu. I'm very excited about Wilyer in 2026. Now, over the last couple of seasons, he has shown a lot of good things, but I don't think he's fully put it together. There's a couple of things he still has to take a step forward with. Now, last season, remember, he got off to a very hot start. Hit .295 with a .965 OPS. He was coming up with some big hits, had the walk-off against the Cardinals. Remember, he was setting the world on fire, and a big part of that was he had made some good adjustments going into the 2025 season. If you remember back in 2024, he struggled against both breaking and off-speed pitches, so pitchers were trying to attack him there, but he made the good adjustments, and he was just pounding those pitches. But eventually, pitchers started attacking him differently. They started coming after him with the fastball, something they did well with back in 2024. They started attacking him a little bit differently, though, and he ended up struggling against fastballs last year. So, he has shown the ability to make those adjustments against those pitches. So I think he can do the same here in 2026, get back on track against those fastballs, which he hit well back in 2024. So I think this is the year where he finally puts it all together, hitting consistently against all different kinds of pitches. But another area is hitting left-handers, where last year he did, still, not amazing by any means, but he did show improvement overall. Taking a look at his numbers against left-handed pitching over the last couple of years. Back in 2024, he only hit 180 against left-handed pitching, but last year, it went up to 230. The WRC Plus increased, the OPS increased a little bit. Still not where you want it to be, but he did show those improvements. So I'm banking on Wilyer here for this year. The fact that he has shown the ability to make those adjustments against pitches and left-handers last year, I think he can take a step forward this year when it comes to both. If you take a look here, the batted ball profile still looked very solid last year. Average exit velo in the 66th percentile, 77th percentile. When it comes to the barrel percentage, the walks were also looking very good last year in the 67th percentile. Now, he did show improvement with his whiff percentage last year. If you take a look back in 2024, it was at 29.6%, but last year he did clean it up. He brought it down to 24%. Still not amazing by any means, more middle of the road, but again, a guy that's shown the ability to make those adjustments and improve year after year. And the fact that he's still only 26 years old, I think you're going to see a very good year from Wilyer this year. This is a guy who I think has a ton of upside. He's going to give you the good defense out in right field. Let's see if he can fully stay healthy this coming year. A guy who has had some issues over the last couple of years, right? He missed time towards the end of the season last year. He came back for the postseason. Still wasn't looking quite right, but I'm very excited about Wilyer for this coming year. Again, I'm banking on the adjustments that he's shown that he can make over the last couple of years. I'm looking for a big year from Wilyer Abreu. But those are my top 5 candidates for Red Sox that I like in 2026. I know we could go with a lot more players here, but these are the 5 guys that I feel very good about. We'll take a look back at this down the road, but I'm feeling pretty good that I can go 5 for 5 on these guys. Maybe I miss a little bit. I think we could go at least 4 for 5 on these guys. We'll take a look back in the future. But let me know down below in the comments some players that you're feeling very good about in 2026. Like I said, we got the obvious guys like Garrett Crochet, who I think can go after a Cy Young this year. Could Roman Anthony even go after an MVP? I'm not going to doubt him whatsoever. That guy is an absolute maniac. He's a stud. You got guys like Ranger Suarez, like I mentioned, and guys in the bullpen as well. Aroldis Chapman, Garrett Whitlock. Other guys could fit into that category as well. But I wanted to highlight guys who I think could really take a good step forward with the Red Sox this year and have a very productive year. So those are my choices. Let me know your choices down below in the comments. But everybody, that's all I got for now. If you're kind of the way out, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, if you're listening to us in podcast format, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us out. But everybody, that's all I got. I'll talk to you next time.